Hey folks, my program Roske on Politics will be returning every Sunday morning the whole month before the election. We're going to be focusing on 3 races. You've got former Congressman David Young versus current Congresswoman Cindy Axne. You got Ernst versus Greenfield, and of course President Donald Trump versus former Vice President Joe Biden. But we're also going to be talking to community leaders, because the controversy and the conflict that is so rampant in today's American politics, we're going to do what we can to help unify this country before this historic election. That's every Sunday the whole month before the election. I hope you'll tune in. Hey folks, welcome to Roske on Politics. I couldn't be more happy to be back here on a beautiful day right in front of the Iowa State Capitol. Of course, we've got the beautiful city of Des Moines over our shoulder. I couldn't sit this election season out, folks. You've got 4 incredibly close races we're looking at, and I just had to cover it, so let's talk about these races. First one, J.D. Scholten versus State Senator Randy Feinstra. That's up in the northwest corner of the state. There's only 4 congressional districts in the state of Iowa, so J.D. Scholten got really close to beating Steve King last time. Steve King just lost his primary, though, this time to State Senator Randy Feinstra. That's going to be an incredibly close race. Second close race we're looking at, U.S. Senator Joni Ernst versus political newcomer Theresa Greenfield. Now, I am as surprised as anybody to say that this race is actually within the margin of error right now. A lot of polls are showing up between 2 and 5 percentage points. That's margin of error. People say you're in Motown if you're in the margin of error. So that's going to be an incredibly close race. The third race that Iowans are going to be looking at, the presidency. President Donald Trump versus former Vice President Joe Biden. Folks, I've had conversations with folks from both parties who are bragging about how their candidate is going to do in the general election. Let me tell you something. I called the last presidential election for Donald Trump 75 days before the election on live television, and let me tell you, this is going to be a close race. This is going to be state to state. This is going to be person to person. If you like one of these candidates, let me tell you, get your friends and family together, because you're going to need every one of those votes to push it over the top. And finally, one of the amazingly close races we're looking at here in Iowa, we're going to have both candidates on here today. That is for this congressional district, Iowa's 3rd congressional district. We're here in Polk County. We're gonna be talking to former Congressman David Young and current Congresswoman Cindy Axne. So David Young was elected to Congress. He was re-elected, and then he lost to now Congresswoman Cindy Axne. We're gonna have both of them on the program today to talk about health care, to talk about jobs, to talk about Black Lives Matter. We're gonna cover it all. Who's up first? You'll find out. We're gonna flip a coin, and you'll find out right after the opening credit sequence of Roske on Politics.
We will become a rich and great nation again. Thank you. Great honor.
We have the top 1/10 of 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 90%.
Independents, Democrats, Republicans, bring them all, because I want to talk with all of them.
The things that I've been concerned about in this nation for the last few years have not changed.
We're chatting with Chief National Correspondent for the New York Times Magazine, Mark Leibovich, and Governor Bobby Jindal.
Thank you for having my wife in your beautiful home.
U.S. Senator Joni Ernst.
Hop on the back.
I got my own.
Okay,
I ride. This is not just a prop today. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard.
Aloha.
Aloha.
To your viewers.
What's so interesting about the Iowa caucuses is it's unique and it's different, and it really favors relationships.
That Iowans are filled with common sense.
Governor Terry Branstad, Rick Klein, someone who's been on the show several times, Congressman David Young, the D.C. Shadow Senator Paul Strauss.
Any candidate who is seeking to earn the awesome and sacred trust of the presidency of the United States has to come and engage with the people of Iowa.
Governor Mike Huckabee, Mr. Newt Gingrich, the highest ranking Democrat in the state of Iowa, Congressman Dave Loebsack, John Huntsman, Senator Joe Lieberman, Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Chuck Grassley.
I haven't eaten anything other than fried Snickers. Can't describe it. It's just like going to heaven.
We need to push back to the RNC. This is a dumb way to do it. At the end of the day, Brad Pitt would be in our debate.
I think it's important because it's the first contest.
A potential Clinton Castro ticket.
Whoever the nominee is gets to pick who their vice president's going to be.
Folks, welcome back to Roske on Politics. We are here on a beautiful day right in front of the Iowa State Capitol, literally in the shadow of the Capitol today, to talk to one of the candidates of one of the four closest races we're looking at in the state, former two-term member of Congress, David Young. Thanks so much for being here today.
It's great to be with you, Brent.
So, folks, if you've watched this show, you know that Mr. Young had been on, well, I don't know, 20 times, 30 times in the past. We both look a little older. For myself, I don't think I'm any wiser, but I think he is. So you were elected twice.
Yeah.
You've decided to run again. What made you think, you know what, I'm gonna put my hat in the ring one more time?
Well, there's a lot of work left to be done that I want to see accomplished. And I think about the 3rd District. I know it very well, and the people know me. And I'll be ready to hit the ground running. And it's really about, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life is a given, and we want a quality of life, and I want to help provide that through a strong economy, quality of life with health care and education. The liberty, making sure our constitutional rights are secured, private property rights, religious freedom, freedom of speech, and the pursuit of happiness. And you can only pursue your happiness if you feel safe. And right now we have a law and order issue, and I want to make sure that we have a safe country.
You served as the former chief of staff to U.S. Senator Chuck Grassley. Then you got elected to Congress. You served 2 terms. What was different about being in D.C. as a staffer versus being a member? How was that attention different? What'd you learn?
Well, when you're a staffer, nobody really cares what you say, and you're not quoted. But people cared about my opinion and my actions as a member of Congress. And you have a real say, and the responsibility can weigh on you. And it's a big responsibility because the power of that vote, it impacts people's lives.
Yeah, we talked a lot about when you were elected the first time, how it was a 5-way primary. Went to convention and you won. You won your primary this time quite handily. But let's talk about, so that was the win. So the night of the election that you didn't make it back into the House, what'd that feel like? Were you surprised?
Every election is different. It seems like maybe every day in politics is different as well. But I respect the will of the people, and the people spoke, and that's the process. And if you don't like it, tough. The people spoke, and if you want to do it again, and if others are asking you to consider running again, you weigh that decision very carefully, and I did, and I'm back in the race.
The folks are going to see both of these candidates on this program. Grateful to have you both on the program. So you're running against current Congresswoman Cindy Axne. What sets you two apart? What's interesting, you look at members of Congress, you two are fairly in the middle when it comes to, reasonable folks. What sets you apart? What should voters know to make Young their choice instead of Axne?
Well, unlike in 2018, Cindy Axne didn't have a voting record. But now I can go on the offense, not only talk about my ideas, but her voting record. And she votes with Nancy Pelosi 98% of the time. She campaigned as kind of a moderate, mainstream, down the middle kind of person. She does not govern that way or legislate that way. For instance, the economy, I want to keep taxes low, especially as we're coming out of this, economic malaise from the coronavirus. She wants to raise taxes. She wants to repeal the tax relief. I don't think right now, or really any time, is a good time to start raising taxes on people who are trying to get back to work in small businesses. When it comes to health care, her Axne public option program is really a slow drip to single payer health care, where everybody would go into a Medicare system. And the Medicare is for our seniors. That was for them, and they should have the priority. And I will just say that I will make sure that I vote every time. In my 4 years in Congress, I never missed a vote. And Cindy Axne has been missing vote after vote after vote. And she's even signed a proxy to a member from Baltimore, Maryland, who's a self-avowed socialist, to vote for Iowa's 3rd District. People I talked to about that and who find out about that, Republicans and Democrats say, we voted for her, we vote for any member, we want them to go to work for us and vote. She's not showing up and she's giving Iowa's vote away, and I will not give Iowa's vote away.
Folks, we'll have more with David Young later on in the program, but up next, his challenger, current Congresswoman for Iowa's 3rd District, Cindy Axne's up next, as well as part of my conversation with State Representative Akeo Abdul-Samad, talking about the tragic death of George Floyd up in Minneapolis, the protests here in Des Moines, all that and so much more. Don't go anywhere. La, da, 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 da.
running slow when the world's spinning out of control.
Leadership, team building, problem solving. Those who have served in the United States military have been trained well to serve our country on the battlefield. Theodore Roosevelt said, "Let us remember that, as much has been given us, much will be expected from us." Our military veterans have answered that call, and they have been tested and battle-hardened over a decade of war. Now, as these servant leaders return to our communities, our nation has an incredible opportunity to embrace and empower them to become leaders and civic assets who will reinvigorate our communities here at home. That is why Got Your Six was created. In the military, Got Your Six means I've got your back. It refers to the 6 o'clock position on a clock. In combat, this concept is simple. I'm watching out for you, and you're watching out for me. We are in this together. The Got Your Six campaign works with nonprofit organizations, the government, and the entertainment industry to help bridge the civilian-military divide. As a way to demonstrate that veterans are leaders and civic assets, Got Your Six and its partners have set audacious goals as part of the 6 pillars of veteran reintegration. The progress has been astounding. In the first year alone, over 10,000 homeless veterans were housed. More than 100,000 jobs were filled, and millions of hours of service were performed by veterans. Millions of Americans have experienced the Got Your Six movement across all media platforms, and the campaign is actively teaching our nation how to welcome our veterans by showing them that we still need them. The 60-second Got Your Six PSA, featuring Hollywood heavyweights Tom Hanks, Alec Baldwin, Bradley Cooper, Sarah Jessica Parker, and many others, has been seen by tens of millions of people on dozens of network and cable channels. Got Your Six, a campaign, a movement, a call to action to Americans to understand the opportunities that our returning veterans provide to our communities. Log on now to gotyoursix.org to show your support and learn how you can help out. I'm Gavin DeGraw. Thank you for watching.
Hey folks, welcome back to the program out here on Easter Lake in Des Moines, a beautiful day here in late summer. We sat down with Congresswoman Cindy Axne out in West Des Moines, talked about healthcare, talked about insurance, and talked about what she's been doing in Congress and why she would like to go back. Let's take a look. Folks, welcome back to Roske on Politics. Always grateful to be chatting with current elected officials. Today is no exception. Thanks so much to Congresswoman Cindy Axne. Thanks for being on the program.
Well, great to be here with you today.
So this is one of the key races that this program is focused on. Axne versus Young, Ernst versus Greenfield, and of course the presidential race. But you have been a member of Congress now for quite some time. The last time I spoke to you, you'd just been elected. How has your first term been so far?
Well, let's just say we've been busy. Started in a government shutdown and now we're in a pandemic. So listen, my mom used to say I'd take off more than she thought I could chew, but I always was able to handle it. So I'm glad I've got the trust of the people here in Iowa. We've had a lot to do from trade wars, to the renewable fuel standard waivers hitting our district, to the pandemic, to social unrest. So it's been something else. I'm glad I'm doing it. I can tell you that 10 years of serving in both the Democratic and Republican administrations here at multiple levels at the state has been really good for me to have that background to go in and understand how we can better do things in a government that quite honestly needs a little bit of readdressing at this point.
So let's talk about that. You know, in my estimation, it seems like the two sides are fighting worse than they have in a long time. And I discussed with your opponent right now, where do you see, now that you're actually in the House of Representatives, where's common ground? Are there issues that exist right now that the two parties can actually get together on?
Yeah, there's a handful, and as a matter of fact, I like to point out that I have one of the most bipartisan records in the House. I introduce all of my bills with a Republican colleague. I know that there's no better way to get things done than to actually have support on the other side so you can move an agenda forward, and I'm out there to get things done. And so for me, that's been a priority. I'll tell you, the areas where we can find a lot of support, agriculture seems to be one of those, and I sit on the agriculture committee, so being able to help our farmers, ensuring that we put food on the table of people in this country is one area where we can find support. Listen, we just were able to pass the Great Outdoors Act and have the president sign that into law, so protecting our public lands and leaving a legacy for this country seems to get support. And I'd say in general, when it comes to some key economic drivers related to COVID, we've got some understanding that we've got to get something done there. And I would tell you that there's a heck of a lot of people that would prefer that we could do things more in a bipartisan fashion. And I talked to both Democratic and Republican colleagues about this. And there are people who are ready to take this to this next level. There's just some people that have made too much out of only representing their sides. But we'll get over that.
You know, I think one of the biggest issues comes up every time I chat with folks about politics. Healthcare, obviously there's many different roads to what people think would be an improvement. What would be the Axne plan to improve American healthcare?
Listen, I've been saying since the beginning, let's shore up the Affordable Care Act, keep people with pre-existing conditions covered, lower the cost of prescription drugs, and introduce a public option. I think everybody should be able to buy into Medicare or Medicaid. We shouldn't have to have good quality affordable health insurance tied to a job. We absolutely need to make sure that it's affordable. I've been fighting for things like closing the reimbursement gap rate between our rural health clinic and our urban health clinics. That's a bill that I wrote. There's too much within our system that we need to look at structurally. So I often say to people, you can name this a lot of different things, whatever you want to name it. We still have to go in and look at some of the key components that are keeping our healthcare system from functioning in any way that it should be, no matter if you call it public option, Medicare for all, or ACA, or keep it as is, whatever it is. We got a lot of work to do.
A decade of war has taken an unprecedented toll on our men and women in uniform.
Our veterans are the bedrock of our society. They are leaders whose strength and honor place them among our community's most valuable assets. But everyone's journey home is not the same.
Tragically, hundreds of thousands of our veterans are suffering from the trauma of war.
Without assistance, the downward spiral can be quick and destructive. An average of 22 veterans take their own lives every day.
It doesn't have to be this way.
At Justice for Vets, we believe that every veteran should have the opportunity for treatment and restoration.
That is why Justice for Vets has been working to establish veterans' treatment courts across the nation.
Instead of allowing our veterans to languish behind bars, these courts connect veterans to the treatment they need, the services they've earned, the support they deserve.
Veterans treatment courts hold our veterans accountable for their actions.
By providing structure, treatment, and mentoring, these courts help our veterans and their families get their lives back on track.
And veterans treatment courts work.
They're working by returning healthy veterans to their families, sending veterans back to school, helping them find jobs, and putting veterans back into service in our communities.
Veterans treatment courts are nationally recognized as the most innovative and effective solution for saving the lives, families, and futures of our veterans, while saving tax dollars for the American public.
Justice for Vets is the only national organization dedicated to the expansion of veterans treatment courts.
With 2.6 million veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, there is an urgent and growing need for more veterans treatment courts. And Justice for Vets is the only organization capable of meeting this demand.
We ask much of our men and women in uniform, and they ask little in return. It is our collective duty to come to their aid when they struggle on the home front. This not only honors their sacrifice, but makes our communities stronger.
A donation to Justice for Vets helps put a veterans treatment court within reach of every veteran in need.
A donation to Justice for Vets keeps veterans in treatment where they belong.
A donation to Justice for Vets shows your commitment to leaving no veteran behind.
A donation to Justice for Vets will help save lives, restore families, and rebuild communities.
Get involved and go to justiceforvets.org.
Veterans fought for our freedom. Now it's our turn to fight for theirs. Thank you.
The pandemic, we're obviously a few months into it right now. How do you think the response has been at the state and federal level? What would you like to see change, improve upon?
Oh boy, I'll be honestly, I believe that we could have gone through this pandemic and come out with less deaths and a better opportunity to restore our economy more quickly had we followed some early protocol that other countries have and that they've been doing much better than we have in those regards. So certainly I would have liked to have seen that when Defense Production Acts were put into place by this president to keep essential workers on the job, like our meatpacking plants, that then a Defense Production Act would have been put in place to make sure that they had the PPE and the supplies they needed so that those workers didn't get sick and carry that home and exacerbate the issue. I certainly think that we've got a lot to look at with the schools reopening and making sure that we're putting kids back to school in a safe way, but in a way that everybody feels comfortable with as well. So I think had we early on done more with mask mandates, made sure that there was PPE and appropriate supplies in this country. I was fighting literally for tests and supplies to come here and calling test providers and actually getting them into our labs. That's how much we had to do on the ground because at a national level that wasn't happening. So had we followed some of those, and I'll be honest, had we done some early shelter in place, we would have seen this go through more quickly and we could be getting back to work more quickly.
Is there an argument that says Iowa, I mean, we see woods around us right now. Is there an argument that says Iowa is more spread out? It didn't have to be that strict, or don't you see it that way?
Well, I certainly think there's areas of Iowa where we haven't seen as much impact, and so probably being more strict there wouldn't have been as necessary. The problem is it's hard to put a piece of policy in place in a state that you say, well, here you don't need it and here you need it. We have people who travel in and out of counties to work. We have people who travel back and forth from counties for health care. We have people who travel here to the Des Moines area on a regular basis because of the State House and other big businesses here. So I think if we had to do something, it has to be holistic because it truly is those gaps where we're seeing the issues happen. And I'll be honest, one of my biggest pain points, and I find it shameful for our state, is that we've let too many older Iowans die in nursing homes by themselves because we didn't take the right protocol to send test centers out to those locations like I've requested that we do for the governor.
A few years ago, one of the guests on the program was former Speaker Newt Gingrich, and he and I talked about political theater and how he and President Clinton at the time would get on the cameras and go at it, and then afterward have conversations and try to get together on budget, etc. Now that you've actually served some time in the U.S. House of Representatives, is it as bad as the news would say it is? Are the two sides as far apart as what we're led to believe?
I think, listen, there's a lot of differences between the two sides of in regard to some of these bigger issues. And right now, what's happening as a result of COVID, we're seeing these inequities in this country just laid bare. Whether it's the inability for people to afford a good roof over their head because rates and pay are so low. Affordable housing needs a lot of emphasis because we don't have a lot of good places for people across this country. Health care that they can't afford. There are people right now wondering if they will be stuck with a COVID bill because they don't have appropriate insurance. So we're seeing all these issues come to light. And we realize that it's something that we have to be thoughtful of and work on. And unfortunately, on the Democratic side, we're trying to push for some of those issues to have more support behind them, more support to making sure that our kids go back to school safely or in school safely, more support for hospitals and healthcare providers as they continue to struggle through this. And on the Republican side, they're looking at much more just shoring up relief, very straightforward and as minimal as possible. Listen, I agree that we should be economically, we should absolutely ensure that we're getting the best out of taxpayer dollars. I spent a decade in state government holding it accountable, and I want to make sure that we're effective and efficient. But to do so during a pandemic, you ask any economist, this is not the time to cut back. Now is the time to make the investments that are appropriate for getting our economy back on track and not to go small on any of those. We can work out what the expenses look like in the future. Let's make sure that we keep people alive right now.
Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll come right back with Congresswoman Cindy Axne. Don't go anywhere. Hey folks, my program Roske on Politics will be returning every Sunday morning the whole month before the election. We're going to be focusing on 3 races. You've got former Congressman David Young versus current Congresswoman Cindy Axne. You got Ernst versus Greenfield, and of course, President Donald Trump versus former Vice President Joe Biden, but we're also going to be talking to community leaders because the controversy and the conflict that is so rampant in today's American politics, we're going to do what we can to help unify this country before this historic election. That's every Sunday, the whole month before the election. I hope you'll tune in. Hi folks, welcome back to the program, chatting with Congresswoman Cindy Axne. Now we were talking about a little bit about the political parties, how they seem to be apart on quite a few different things. Let's talk about the race right now. I've heard on the Democrat side that there seems to be some type of distance between the progressive part of the party and the moderates in the party. Do you see that in Washington? Do you think that's going to affect the outcome in November?
You know, we're a big tent as a Democratic Party. We bring a lot of ideas to the table. I think we're all working together to make sure that we're addressing the issues that Americans across this country are facing. And I know I'm doing the work that I need to be doing here for the people in the great 3rd District of Iowa. I was out there, I'll tell you, Brent, maybe about three months in, and I took a look around. I think I looked up at the voting board and I said, my God, there's 50 reps from California and 40 from New York and 30 from Florida. I've got to be the voice of 10 representatives for me to get the job done for Iowans out here. And so whether I was bringing home $3 billion for our flood or standing up against the administration and the EPA's issuance of renewable fuel standard waivers, that's what you got to do. And so for me, it's truly been how I've approached this job. I will stand up for what's right for the people here in our state. I will make sure that I push back against anybody, whether it's my own party, if it's not working for the people here in our district. And I've done both. And so I'm going to make sure that their voices are heard. And so for me, I take all of those things into consideration. I know that there's progressive versus moderate, as I think so many people would like to say, but I think the majority of people are doing what I'm doing, especially those of us who flip seats. We're truly working for the people in our districts.
We can't keep allowing individuals to be killed in this country, and not just black people. You know, every race, every gender needs to stand up so we can work together. And we have to be able to say enough is enough. But we can't keep using this mindset that these are first steps. No, the first step that was ever taken was that slave decided not to be a slave and decided to run. That's the first step. Now, this country has put us in a perpetual reactionary mode to correct injustice. Because every time we take steps to correct it, we end up having to fight for voter rights. We have to end up fighting voter suppression. We have to end up fighting those things that we shouldn't have to fight anymore, because everybody should say you have a right to vote. Everyone's treated. And then we take on the language, Brett, that, you know, well, we have to have our civil rights. And I say to people, and in all my speeches and my workshops, you have to have human rights before you have civil rights.